The old woman stepped onto the airplane with slow, gentle movements. She held a small handbag close to her chest, the same bag she had used for many years. Her steps were careful, almost like she was afraid of slipping. Her legs were not strong anymore, but she tried her best to walk without stopping the line behind her. The passengers waiting at the door watched her with mixed expressions. Some were tired, some were impatient, and some simply looked away. The woman did not blame anyone. She knew she moved slowly. She knew she needed time. Still, she hoped to reach her seat without trouble. Behind her stood a flight attendant, a young woman who was already stressed from boarding time pressure. The flight was almost full. Passengers were still trying to put bags in overhead bins. The attendant wanted everything to move fast, and the slow movement of the elderly woman made her nervous. "Mom, please move a little faster," the attendant said in a louder tone than she intended. The old woman flinched. Her hands shook slightly. She turned her head and gave a small, apologetic smile. "I am sorry, dear, I am trying." But the attendant was too stressed to notice the softness of the woman's voice. "We have many people waiting. Please keep going," she said again, sounding impatient. A few passengers looked up. A quiet discomfort spread through the cabin. No one liked watching an older person spoken to like that, but no one said anything either. The old woman continued walking slowly, holding the seatbacks for support, trying not to disturb anyone. Every few steps, she had to pause to catch her breath. Her eyes looked tired yet kind. She did not complain. She simply kept moving, even though the attendant's tone had clearly hurt her. A middle-aged man seated near the front noticed everything. He wore a simple jacket, looked calm, and seemed like the type of person who never ignored unfairness. He kept watching the old woman, feeling something heavy in his chest. There was something familiar in the way she walked, like someone who had spent a lifetime caring for others and now had no one caring for her. The old woman reached the spot where her row began. She looked at her ticket closely, trying to read the small print. Her eyesight was not very strong anymore. She brought the ticket closer to her eyes, confused for a moment. The flight attendant sighed loudly. "Mom, your seat is just there. Please sit so other people can pass." Her tone made the old woman's shoulders shrink a little. She nodded quickly and moved toward the seat, but her trembling hands made it hard to lift her bag into the overhead bin. The middle-aged man stood up from his own seat. "I can help you with that," he said gently. The old woman looked at him with grateful eyes. "Thank you, son, thank you so much." He took the bag from her hands with ease and placed it in the overhead bin. The flight attendant stepped aside, looking a little embarrassed, but she still kept her serious face. She didn't apologize. She only wanted the boarding to finish quickly. The old woman then turned toward her seat. Sitting down was another slow process. She held the armrest with a soft grip and lowered herself slowly, carefully, almost afraid her body might not cooperate. When she finally sat, she gave a very small sigh of relief. No one knew that the slow walk wasn't just because of age. She had a small medical condition that made her legs stiff in cold weather, and airplanes were always cold for her. But she never used her condition to ask for special treatment. She believed in patience. She believed in kindness. She believed that people would understand if she stayed gentle. As she settled into her seat, she pulled out a small scarf from her bag and placed it over her knees. Then she looked out the window, her eyes soft but deep, as if carrying memories that no one in the cabin could ever guess. The middle-aged man beside her asked quietly, "Are you okay, ma'am?" "Yes, son," she said with a warm smile. "I am fine. Thank you for your help." Her voice was tender, the kind that made people feel calm just by hearing it. But her hands still trembled a little, a sign of the stress she tried to hide. The man nodded, still feeling uneasy about the way the attendant had spoken to her. Something told him that this old woman was not just any passenger. She carried an air of quiet dignity, the kind that comes from living a life full of responsibility and love. What no one knew, not the passengers, not the crew, not even the impatient flight attendant, was that the old woman was traveling to surprise someone important, someone who thought the world of her, someone who would not be happy to learn how she had been treated on this plane, someone sitting only a few steps away behind the cockpit door. And soon the entire cabin would discover the truth. The plane door had finally closed, and the passengers started settling into their seats. People were adjusting seat belts, checking phones before airplane mode, and organizing small bags under their seats. But the middle-aged man beside the old woman could not stop thinking about what had happened during boarding. The scene kept replaying in his head, the raised voice, the shaky hands, the quiet apology from someone who did not deserve to be spoken to that way. He looked at the old woman again. She sat peacefully, almost like nothing had happened. Her calm smile rested on her face, but her fingers still trembled slightly. Her eyes stayed focused on the small window beside her seat, watching the ground crew move around outside. She looked gentle, fragile, yet full of some quiet strength. The man leaned slightly closer and spoke softly. "Ma'am, I hope you're feeling better now. I didn't like how the attendant spoke to you." The old woman shook her head slowly. "It is all right, son. People have busy mornings. Maybe she is tired." Her answer surprised him. Most people would stay upset for the whole flight. But her voice held no anger, only understanding. "You're very kind," he said. She smiled again, the soft kind of smile that made a person feel warm. "Life is easier when we stay kind," she whispered. The man wanted to ask more, but he didn't want to appear nosy still. Something about her felt special, like she had lived a life of caring for others, not expecting anything in return. A few minutes later, the flight attendant passed by again to check if everyone was seated. When she reached the old woman's row, her expression tightened for a moment. She probably remembered the earlier moment and felt a little uneasy. But she didn't say anything. She simply nodded and moved on. The man noticed this too. He kept watching her body language, and he wondered if she realized the old woman was not someone who would complain or argue. Someone gentle is often misunderstood as weak, and that bothered him. The pilot's voice came over the speakers, announcing the flight time and weather. Passengers listened briefly, then returned to their activities. The aircraft hummed softly as it prepared for takeoff. The old woman adjusted her scarf and closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to rest. The man did not want to disturb her, but when she opened her eyes again, she looked in his direction. "Are you traveling for work?" she asked kindly. He smiled. "Yes, a small business meeting. And you, ma'am?" "I am going to see my son," she replied, her voice brightening. "It has been some time since we met." The man's eyebrows rose. "That must be nice. Is he expecting you?" She shook her head gently. "No, it is a surprise. I wanted to see his face when he finds me there." Her smile grew wider. Filled with a mother's excitement, the man found himself smiling too. Something about her joy felt pure. "That sounds wonderful," he said. "I am sure he will be very happy." She nodded slowly. "He works too hard, my boy. Always busy, always running. But he is a good man." The man noticed the softness in her eyes, the kind that only a mother carries. He wanted to ask what her son did for work, but she looked tired again, so he stayed quiet. A little later, she pressed the call button gently. She needed some water. When the flight attendant returned, her voice was still a bit sharp, but not as harsh as before. "Yes, Mom?" she asked. "Could I have a little water, please?" The old woman said politely. The attendant nodded, though she looked rushed. "I'll bring it soon." Then she walked away quickly. The man frowned. He thought the attendant could at least show a softer attitude, but the old woman simply folded her hands in her lap and waited quietly. After a few minutes, the attendant returned with a cup of water. She placed it on the tray and walked off almost immediately. The old woman picked up the cup, her hands trembling slightly. The man leaned forward. "Let me help you," he said softly. She handed him the cup with a grateful nod. "Thank you, son. These hands are not very strong anymore." He held the cup steady while she took small sips. When she finished, she sighed with comfort and smiled again. "You are very kind," she said. "I think you deserve kindness, ma'am," he replied. Outside the window, the runway began to move as the plane pushed back. The old woman looked out again, her eyes filled with a quiet excitement. "Do you miss your son a lot?" the man asked softly. "Every day," she said. "He works far away, but he calls whenever he can. Still, a call is not the same as seeing him." The man felt something warm in his chest. The love in her voice was pure and strong. It made him think of his own mother, waiting at home for him to return after every business trip. The engines grew louder as the plane prepared for takeoff. Passengers sat up straight, ready for the moment. The old woman held her small scarf tighter. The man wondered again what kind of son she had, someone busy, someone respected, someone she loved deeply. He did not know that this son was closer than he thought. And soon, everyone on the plane would learn that the gentle old woman sitting quietly in her seat was not just any passenger. She was someone very, very important. The plane slowly lifted into the sky, and the passengers leaned back as the engines hummed softly. The old woman held her scarf close and closed her eyes for a moment. Takeoff always made her a little nervous, but she tried to stay calm. Her breathing was slow, steady, and peaceful, almost like she had learned long ago how to hold her worries quietly inside. The middle-aged man beside her watched her carefully. He could see the small tension in her shoulders, so he spoke softly. "Are you okay, ma'am? Do you need anything?" She opened her eyes and gave him a gentle smile. "I am fine, son. Thank you. I just get a little nervous during takeoff." He nodded. "It's normal. Happens to me too sometimes." She laughed lightly, a soft, warm laugh that made him smile. Despite everything, the earlier rushed boarding, the stress, the raised voice, she still carried a calm and kind spirit. After a moment, she turned her head toward him. "You were very kind to help me earlier," she said. "It is rare these days to meet someone who stops and notices an older person." The man shook his head. "It's nothing, ma'am. Anyone would have helped." She looked at him gently, as if she knew he was only being humble. "Not everyone," she whispered. "Sometimes people are in a hurry. Sometimes they forget that those who move slow are doing their best." Her words felt simple, but they touched him deeply. He wondered how many times she had been treated like she was in the way, simply because of her age. "What is your name, ma'am?" he asked softly.
"My name is Evelyn," she replied. And you, son? Daniel.
he said. It's nice to meet you, Miss Evelyn. She nodded kindly. It is nice to meet you too, Daniel. For a moment, the cabin felt peaceful. The plane sailed smoothly through the clouds and sunlight streamed through the windows, lighting Evelyn's face softly. She looked almost angelic, calm, warm, full of quiet wisdom. Daniel decided to ask a little more. You said earlier you are visiting your son. Does he live in the city we're flying to?
Yes,
She said with a happy nod. He works there. Very busy job, always traveling from one place to another. I hardly get to see him, but he calls me every evening. Her eyes softened as she spoke. The love she held for her son was clear in every word. Daniel smiled. He must care about you a lot. Oh, he does, she said proudly. He always worries if I'm eating well, if I'm taking my medicine, if I'm resting enough. He is a good boy. Daniel imagined a hard-working son who probably didn't know his mother was on this flight. The thought made him smile. But won't he be surprised? He asked. Evelyn nodded eagerly. Yes, very surprised. I wanted to visit without telling him. I want to see his face when I walk in. He will say, Mom, when did you get here? Why didn't you call? Her voice filled with excitement, like a child planning a secret gift. And what will you say? Daniel asked. She laughed softly. I will say, a mother can surprise her child once in a while. Daniel felt warmth spread through his chest. The way Evelyn spoke, the way she moved, the way she smiled, it all showed the gentleness of someone who lived a life full of love. A moment later, the flight attendant walked by again. She looked at Evelyn and then at Daniel, noticing their conversation. She paused for a second. Is everything okay here? She asked, her voice more controlled now, not as sharp as before. Yes, Daniel replied politely. We're fine, thank you. Evelyn added softly, thank you for checking. The attendant nodded. But there was something in her eyes, maybe a small feeling of guilt from earlier. She gave a tight smile and walked on. Daniel looked back at Evelyn. You didn't say anything to her, he said quietly. Evelyn shook her head. There is no need to make trouble. Maybe she was having a difficult morning. We all have days like that. Daniel admired her even more. Most people would still be upset. But Evelyn carried kindness like a shield, soft, but strong in its own way. After a few quiet moments, Evelyn pulled out a small photo from her bag. She held it gently like it was something precious. This is my son, she said, offering the picture to Daniel. Daniel took it carefully. The picture showed a younger version of Evelyn standing beside a tall man in a uniform. The man had kind eyes and a confident smile. He seems like a very responsible person, Daniel said honestly. He is, she replied. He worked very hard for his job. Too hard sometimes. I hope he takes care of himself. Daniel returned the photo, and Evelyn placed it back into her bag with great care. You must be proud, he said. I am, she said softly. More than he knows. The plane moved smoothly through the sky as their conversation slowly faded into a peaceful silence. Evelyn rested her hands on her lap, her trembling now gone. Daniel could tell she felt calmer, safer, and heard. He still didn't know who her son was. He didn't know that the picture he saw was not just a man in a uniform, but someone who held a very important position on this plane. And very soon, the entire cabin would discover it. The flight had now reached a calm altitude. The seatbelt signs turned off, and passengers began to move around. Some stretched their legs, some opened books, and some prepared to take a short nap. The soft sound of the engines filled the cabin like a steady background hum. Evelyn sat quietly, enjoying the peaceful moment. Her hands rested on her scarf, and she looked relaxed now. Daniel felt relieved to see her comfortable, especially after the stressful boarding. He glanced at the aisle, wondering if the flight attendant felt any regret for how she had spoken earlier. A few rows ahead, the attendant was refilling drinks and helping passengers with polite but rushed movement. Her face looked tight, as if she was still carrying the pressure of the busy morning. But every time she walked past Evelyn, she avoided looking directly at her, almost like she was unsure how to act now. Daniel noticed this and sighed quietly. He wished the crew could see Evelyn the way he did. Kind, gentle, full of love. But people often misunderstood kindness as weakness. He hoped the rest of the flight would be peaceful for her. Just then the cockpit door clicked open. The sound was small, but it immediately caught Daniel's attention. It also made the flight attendant freeze for a second. It was unusual for the captain to come out during mid-flight unless something needed checking. Passengers turned their heads as a tall man in a captain's uniform stepped into the cabin. His presence was calm and confident. His posture showed authority, but his face was gentle, carrying a warm, kind expression. Everyone assumed he was just doing a routine check, but Daniel noticed something different. As soon as the captain stepped out, his eyes scanned the cabin, not like someone checking for safety, but like someone searching for a specific person. The captain walked slowly down the aisle, his eyes moving from row to row. His brow was slightly furrowed, not with worry but with focus. The passengers whispered softly, curious why the captain himself was walking through the cabin. The flight attendant quickly approached him. "Captain, is everything all right?" she asked, trying to sound calm. He nodded politely. "Yes, I just need to check something." But Daniel noticed something else. The captain had a small smile forming on his face, an emotional smile, one that looked like he was expecting something good. He was not checking the plane, he was searching for someone. The attendant watched him confused. She followed his gaze but didn't understand what he was looking for. She assumed it must be a technical matter, or maybe a special passenger request. The captain stepped closer to Evelyn's row. At first, he walked without slowing down. Then suddenly his steps stopped, his eyes widened, his face softened instantly, and his entire expression changed from professional calmness to something warm, emotional, almost shining with surprise. Daniel followed his gaze and saw that the captain was looking directly at Evelyn. The flight attendant blinked, confused. She turned to Evelyn, then back to the captain. She did not understand what was happening. Why was the captain staring at the old woman with such emotion? Evelyn, who had been looking at her hands, did not yet notice the attention. She lifted her head slowly, sensing the silence around her. When she saw the captain standing there, her eyes widened just a little, then softened with a warm happiness. Daniel slowly realized something was happening, something important. The captain took a step closer, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Mom," he whispered, unable to hide the happiness in his voice. The entire cabin went silent. Passengers stopped talking. A woman holding a magazine lowered it. A child sitting 2 rows back peeked over the seat. Everyone froze, trying to understand what they had just heard. The flight attendant's face turned pale instantly. Her eyes widened as she looked at Evelyn again, then back at the captain. Evelyn's face lit up with joy, a soft glow spreading across her smile. "Hello, my boy," she said gently, her voice full of love. The captain's eyes became a little shiny. He took another step forward, bending slightly toward her seat. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were coming today?" His voice was warm, emotional, nothing like the commanding tone he used over the speakers. Evelyn laughed softly. "I wanted to surprise you, dear." The captain placed his hand on hers, squeezing it gently, like a son who had not seen his mother for too long. The passengers watched with wide eyes and warm hearts. Daniel felt a rush of emotion inside his chest. The kindness, the patience, the love he had seen in Evelyn suddenly made perfect sense. She was not just a gentle elderly woman, she was the captain's mother. The same captain flying this plane, and no one, especially the flight attendant, had known. The attendant stepped back slowly, her heart beating fast. Her earlier tone, her impatience, her raised voice all replayed in her mind. She suddenly looked frightened, not because she feared punishment, but because she realized she had hurt someone important to the captain, not in position but in heart. The cabin was silent. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. The captain looked at his mother with deep affection. But the real reaction was still coming. The cabin stayed quiet, so quiet that even the soft hum of the airplane felt louder than usual. Every passenger watched the captain and the old woman as if they were witnessing a private moment that somehow belonged to everyone at the same time. Evelyn looked up at her son with eyes full of warmth. She reached out her hand, and the captain held it with both of his. For a moment, he didn't care that the entire plane was watching. He didn't care that he was supposed to be the calm, professional leader. He was simply a son who had missed his mother. "Mom, I can't believe you're here," the captain said softly. His voice carried surprise, joy, and tenderness all at once. Evelyn smiled gently, the way only a mother could. "I told you before, sometimes a mother likes to surprise her child," she said with a quiet laugh. A few passengers smiled at the sweet moment. Some even felt a small emotional sting, remembering their own mothers or parents far away. Daniel felt a deep warmth in his chest. Everything made sense now. Evelyn's patience, her calm spirit, her gentle way of speaking. She was the mother of a man who carried great responsibility, yet she carried her life with simple grace. But the flight attendant felt something different. Her heart sank. She suddenly remembered every moment from boarding. Her raised voice, her impatient tone, the sigh she gave when Evelyn slowed the aisle, the rush, the pressure, the lack of kindness. She swallowed hard. She had not just spoken sharply to an elderly woman. She had spoken sharply to the captain's mother. But even more than that, she had spoken sharply to a woman who had done nothing wrong. Her face turned pale, then pink, then pale again. She stood frozen, unsure whether to step closer or back away. 1,000 thoughts rushed through her mind, but no words came out. The captain, still holding his mother's hand, finally looked up. His gaze moved toward the flight attendant, but his expression didn't show anger. It showed disappointment, the quiet kind that feels even heavier. The attendant lowered her eyes, unable to meet his gaze. Her hands trembled slightly as she took a small step forward. "Captain, I didn't know," she whispered. The captain nodded calmly. "I understand. But she is a passenger. Even if you didn't know, she deserved patience." His voice was not harsh, but it carried a truth that made her heart ache. Evelyn gently pulled her son's hand and shook her head softly.
"It's all right," she said.
"Please don't scold her. Everyone has difficult days. She has a long flight. I am sure she did not mean to hurt anyone." Her kindness surprised even the captain. He looked at her with admiration and love. She had always been like this, Gentle, forgiving, teaching with actions instead of words. The flight attendant felt tears sting her eyes. "Mom, I'm truly sorry," she said in a shaking voice. "I should not have spoken that way. I let the stress get to me. I didn't show you the respect you deserved." Evelyn reached out her hand with a soft smile. "My dear, it is all right. Life becomes easier when we forgive. Just remember to be kind to others who move slowly. Everyone has a story." Her words floated through the cabin like a soft breeze. Passengers nodded, touched by her grace. Daniel watched amazed. He had never seen a moment so simple yet so powerful. An elderly woman forgiving with such warmth, a captain showing such love, a flight attendant learning an important lesson. Not through anger, but through compassion. The captain took a deep breath and smiled at his mother. "Mom, I'm so happy you're here, but you should have told me. I would have come to pick you up." Evelyn shook her head. No. You're always busy. I didn't want to disturb your work. I wanted to come quietly." The captain laughed softly. "Your surprise worked better than you think." The passengers around them chuckled quietly. The tension in the cabin dissolved into a warm, relaxed atmosphere. People whispered to each other about how beautiful the moment was. Then the captain stood straight and addressed the passengers politely. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. This is a very special moment for me. Please excuse the small interruption." Many passengers clapped lightly. Some smiled warmly at Evelyn. She waved her hand shyly, a little embarrassed by the attention. The captain leaned down again and said softly to his mother, "I'll visit you again after I finish the landing. If you need anything, just press the button." Evelyn nodded happily. "I'm fine. Dear, I'm just happy to see you." He squeezed her hand once more, then turned and walked back toward the cockpit. The passengers watched him go, feeling they had seen more than just a simple flight. They had witnessed a reminder of love and respect. The flight attendant remained standing for a few seconds, still processing everything. Then she gently placed her hand on the back of Evelyn's seat. "Mom, if you need anything at all, please tell me," she said quietly. Evelyn touched her hand and smiled. "Thank you, dear." Daniel looked at Evelyn and said softly, "That was beautiful." Evelyn nodded. Moments of kindness always are. But the story was not over. What happened next would change the rest of the flight even more. After the captain returned to the cockpit, the cabin slowly filled with soft whispers. Passengers spoke quietly to one another, sharing their thoughts about what they had just witnessed. Some smiled warmly, others looked emotional, and a few even dabbed tears from their eyes. It was rare to see a moment so pure on a flight, something that touched hearts without saying much. Evelyn rested back in her seat, still glowing with happiness. Her son had recognized her instantly, and the joy she felt stayed on her face like sunlight. Daniel watched her with admiration. Everything about her, her patience, her grace, her gentle nature, was something he wished more people carried. The flight attendant stood a few rows away, still unsure how to approach Evelyn again. Her heart felt heavy, almost too heavy for her small uniform pocket to hold. She kept replaying the captain's words in her mind. She deserved patience. The truth was simple. Evelyn deserved kindness even if she were not the captain's mother. And that thought was the one that made the attendant's heart ache the most. She finally took a deep breath and slowly walked toward Evelyn's seat. This time her movements were cautious, not rushed. Her voice was soft, not sharp. She bent slightly so she could speak at eye level. "May I talk to you?" she said quietly. Evelyn looked up with kind eyes. "Of course, dear. Sit, please." The attendant nodded and kneeled gently beside the seat. Her hands were slightly shaking, not from fear of punishment but from the weight of her own actions. "I'm truly sorry for earlier," she said, her voice almost trembling. "I spoke to you in a way that was not right. I let my stress control my behavior, and I should not have treated you that way." Her eyes grew moist, but she kept her voice steady. "You didn't deserve that. Not at all." Evelyn reached out her gentle hand and rested it lightly on the attendant's. "My dear, everyone makes mistakes," she said softly. "What matters is the heart to correct them." The attendant blinked, touched by her forgiveness. "I've worked on many flights, and sometimes I forget that passengers have their own struggles," she confessed. "You were moving slowly, and I didn't stop to think that maybe you had a reason." "I understand," Evelyn said. "Life moves fast for many people, but slowing down is not weakness. It is simply part of the journey." Evelyn's kind words felt like warmth spreading through the attendant's chest. "I promise, Mom, from today, I will be more patient," the attendant whispered. "You taught me something important." Evelyn smiled, her wrinkles deepening in the sweetest way. "And your apology shows you are a good person." Daniel watched the scene quietly, feeling proud of Evelyn. Her kindness had softened the tension that once filled the cabin. Her words had changed the atmosphere without force, only with love. The attendant stood slowly, wiping the small tear that had escaped. "Is there anything you would like? A blanket, water, tea, anything at all?" Evelyn shook her head gently. "I'm fine, dear. Thank you." But Daniel stepped in. "Maybe a warm drink would be nice for her legs," he suggested softly. The attendant brightened.
Yes, of course.
I'll bring it right away. She walked off with a new calmness in her step, not rushed, not irritated, but truly wanting to help. Evelyn turned to Daniel with a smile. You are very observant, son. Daniel shrugged shyly. I just want you comfortable. You are kind, she said simply. A few minutes later, the attendant returned with a warm cup of chamomile tea. She held it carefully, both hands wrapped around it as if it were something precious. For you, ma'am, she said softly. I hope it helps. Evelyn accepted it with a grateful smile. Thank you, dear. This is very nice. Passengers who watched the moment smiled too. The energy of the cabin had changed. What started as tension now felt like a shared lesson, one about respect, patience, and the small kindnesses that make life gentler. A man sitting across the aisle leaned toward the attendant and whispered, That was very thoughtful. The attendant smiled humbly. Thank you. She deserves it. Evelyn slowly sipped the warm tea, her hands steady now. She closed her eyes for a moment, enjoying the comfort. It's lovely, she said softly. Daniel nodded. You see, things are getting better. Yes, she replied. Sometimes hearts just need a little reminder, and small moments can change big attitudes. The passengers around her heard those words and nodded. They felt true. As the flight continued, the attendant checked on Evelyn more than anyone else. Not out of fear, but out of genuine care. She asked if the temperature was comfortable, if Evelyn needed more tea, and if she wanted a small pillow. Each time, Evelyn thanked her warmly. Soon, the cabin felt more peaceful than it had the entire morning. The tension that had once surrounded the flight attendant melted away. Now, she walked with calm confidence, greeting passengers with a softer tone. Evelyn didn't just forgive her, she taught her. And that teaching spread quietly through the entire plane. But something even more touching was still waiting. A moment that would bring the whole story together, ending the flight with warmth no one would forget. The warm tea relaxed Evelyn's hands, and the gentle hum of the plane made her feel peaceful. She leaned back in her seat, enjoying the smooth air. The cabin around her felt different now, lighter, kinder, almost like everyone on board had taken a deep breath at the same time. Daniel watched her with a soft smile. He felt lucky to have been seated beside her. In only a short time, she had taught him more about patience and kindness than many books or lessons ever could. Passengers whispered softly about the touching moment with the captain, but not in a noisy or disturbing way. Instead, their voices carried admiration. Some even looked at Evelyn with warm smiles when passing her seat. A woman across the aisle leaned over and whispered, Your son seems like a very good man. Evelyn smiled politely. Thank you. I'm very proud of him. And he is proud of you, Daniel added. Evelyn's eyes sparkled a little, but she didn't say anything. She simply held her scarf again, as if holding a memory. The flight attendant, now calm and gentle, returned once more. Mom, would you like another cup of tea? She asked softly. Evelyn shook her head. No, dear. I'm perfectly comfortable. But the attendant didn't leave right away. She hesitated for a moment, then said quietly, I want to thank you again, not only for forgiving me but for showing me how I should treat passengers. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't complain. You were calm, even when I wasn't. I needed that reminder. And Evelyn patted her arm softly. We all learn every day. You will carry this lesson forward, and that is what matters. The attendant nodded gratefully and continued her work, moving with a more thoughtful heart. As the plane began its descent toward the destination city, the captain's voice came over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing to land. Please fasten your seatbelts. But then he paused for a moment. And to one very special passenger, Mom, I'm glad you're here today. The passengers chuckled softly. Some clapped again. Evelyn covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to blush. Daniel smiled warmly, feeling the sweetness of the moment. You see, he whispered to her, he loves you very much. Evelyn simply nodded, her heart full. The plane dipped gently through the clouds, and soon the city below became visible. Glittering buildings, winding roads, and warm sunlight spreading across the landscape. Evelyn watched the view with soft eyes, thinking about how her surprise visit would bring joy to her son's home. She imagined cooking with him, talking with him, laughing together like old times. When the wheels touched the ground, the cabin filled with a soft thud and then a smooth roll. Passengers straightened up, collecting their bags ready to leave. But for Evelyn, this landing was more special than any other. It felt like the beginning of something peaceful. A new memory she would carry forever. When the plane reached the gate and the doors opened, passengers began to stand and move into the aisle. This time, people didn't rush. They stepped aside for Evelyn, offering warm smiles and gentle nods. Please go ahead, ma'am, one man said kindly. No rush, another woman added. Evelyn felt shy from all the attention, but she appreciated their kindness. She stood slowly, steadying herself on the armrest. Daniel helped take down her bag, even though he now understood fully that the captain would have handled everything if he knew. But Daniel wanted to help. Not because she was the captain's mother, but because she was Evelyn. As they walked toward the front of the plane, the crew stepped aside politely. The flight attendant stopped one last time and said gently, Have a wonderful visit, ma'am. And thank you again. Evelyn touched her hand warmly. You will do well, dear. Keep your heart open. The captain was waiting near the cockpit door when she reached him. His professional expression softened instantly into a son's smile. Mom, he said, opening his arms. She stepped into his gentle hug. He held her carefully, like someone holding something precious. You surprised me, he whispered. That was the plan, she laughed. Daniel watched the moment quietly, feeling his own heart warm. He had been part of something special, something he would remember long after this flight. The captain looked at Daniel with gratitude. Thank you for helping her, he said. Daniel nodded. It was an honor. Evelyn smiled at both of them. Be kind to each other, she said softly. That is all life really asks. Passengers began leaving the plane, but the warm feeling stayed in the air. Some wiped away small tears. Others walked with gentle smiles, touched by what they had seen. As Evelyn and her son walked down the jet bridge together, hand in hand, she felt light, happy, and loved. Her slow steps no longer felt like a burden, because now everyone understood them, and her son walked beside her with pride. Kindness had changed the flight, and Evelyn's soft spirit had changed hearts.